Hey everyone, today's video is a little bit different in that, one, you see me, so hi, I'm Blake. Secondly, I want to pivot a little bit because I've realized that what I enjoy most about these videos is kind of comparing and contrasting what I think Flame offers versus what software packages like Nuke or Fusion or Resolve tend to offer. And I find that really helpful because I've been a Flame artist for over 20 years. It's my bread and butter, but I work with a lot of Nuke artists and they do some really cool things, and I'm often quite jealous about how they can do certain operations with such ease. So I want to work up a shot today, probably in two parts, in Flame and in Nuke, so I can kind of weigh the pros and cons of each, and next time when you're in a similar situation, you might have a little bit more perspective on what method might help for the solve that you're going for. What I want to do today with this clip is a UV projection, because that is something that's built into kind of Nuke's DNA with their 3D camera system that's just not quite as intuitive in Flame. So we have to work it a little bit harder to get the results we're after. You won't find it in the manual. It's kind of been part of some hacks that have been happening over the years, and it's kind of, if you know, you know. So I want to, show that just so that you see it in case you don't know, and maybe next time you need to do something like that, if you're a Flame artist, maybe Nuke might be the better tool for you if you have access to it. So kind of showing you the Nuke perspective from a Flame artist point of view. I am not an expert by any means. I've been using it just to kind of get the information I need so I can be informed. So if you have tips or tricks that you want to share with me, especially on the Nuke side and the Flame side too as well, absolutely happy to kind of take any feedback that you have. Let's get started. I want to clean up this area right here in the middle and kind of fill it in with the rocks around it. So if you're in Nuke X, you have a really strong camera tracker, so let's just go ahead and pull one up now. We have the camera tracker. Oh, and I should say, especially if you are a Flame person, I hate this little connection to the context view. So if you double click the viewer, you'll see an option to hide the input. What's nice is it only hides it when you are clicked away, which is when I find it most useful. So if I'm actually on the node, I'll see the connection, but if I click anywhere else, it won't be cluttering up my node graph. So I'm going to attach the camera tracker, and we'll just kind of go through some of these settings pretty quickly. We're going to assume that we know almost nothing about this shot. So I'm not going to get too involved with any of the presets or distortion or anything like that. We're just going to treat both in Flame and Nuke with information that is very little. The only thing I'm really concerned about, honestly, is the number of features. I think 300 is where I want to get started for a shot like this. I see a lot of details and a lot of areas of interest that I think the trackers can lock onto. What's nice is I can go ahead and preview those features initially just to kind of see where the initial tracks are going to be set. If I want to kind of get an alternative, I can hit refine feature locations, which is kind of just doing a different calculation using the same amount of features. If I need to change how the track the trackers are kind of being distributed, I can move the detection threshold and the feature separation, so it'll kind of affect the cluster and how it's picking up the trackers in the first place. For this particular shot, I think the default is fine, so we won't mess with it for now, but just know that it's an option. When I'm ready to go ahead and track, I just hit the track key. What you'll notice is that, yeah, some of these trackers are not going to be very good, and they're going to slide, and they're going to not have anything to anchor onto. That's totally fine. They are going to be killed once we do the solve. So what's nice is the Nuke tracker moves really quickly, and it's interactive in the fact that I can actually see the points that are being generated, and I can get a true sense of its progress. I find it so irritating that in Flame with the new camera analysis tool, I just see a progress bar and I have no real kind of gauge as to what the software is actually doing in the blips that it's creating. Our track is done, but it is not solved. That's why we don't see an error. We need to solve, which is the next step. Immediately you can see, a few of these trackers are no good, and some of the tracks, all of the tracks that are here now give us an error, number and value. So anytime we hover over it, we can see that. This can be helpful when we're trying to refine. Also, if you're coming from the Flame side and you find this annoying that you kind of see the motion path, you can just go to a points only view, and that might clean up the viewport for you. I think tracks and points is fine for what we're doing, so I'll leave it as it is. We have an error of 0.88. That's really good for an HD kind of frame, but I think we can get lower, so we're going to go into the auto tracks and we're going to start to refine the solve. I'm not going to mess with any of this for now. Again, I'm trying to keep this pretty simple, but I will kind of briefly mention what the max track error and the max error do, and why I'm going to lower it. The max track error is the average error of any given track. So you want it to be as low as possible, but still give you the solve that you need. If you go too low, that's going to be just as damaging as if you do nothing at all. So I've already solved this shot, and I know that 1.5 is an error that I think works well for what we're trying to do. The max error, on the other hand, is defined by, it's the worst that any track gets over the sequence. This is not an average. So if it's set to, let's say, 10, then this means on its worst frame, that feature can be off up to 10 pixels when reprojected through the camera. So again, you want to keep this as low as possible as well, because you don't want anything to be too far off from its reprojection. So in this particular case, we're going to set this to 2.5. And now I'm going to go ahead and delete those unsolved trackers that were set. I'm going to delete the rejected ones that we've now killed. And then I'm going to just refine the solve using all of these parameters. And we'll see that we've kind of taken that solve error down just a little bit more. So I'm just going to do one more final deletion of the rejected ones, and we are in business. Now what we need to do is set the ground plane and set the origin to kind of get started, because right now the grid and the center, the origin point, are not at all related to what our scene is showing. This is our point cloud that comes from the tracker by default. We'll kind of make some adjustments to that as we go. So to set our ground plane, I'm just going to drag over the points that I want to include. I can hold down Shift and grab some more, and I can single click. I can do whatever I need to do to kind of define my area. When I have the points I need, I just right click and hit ground plane, set to selected, and now we have the grid lining up with our kind of ground. To get to that 3D view, it's just the tab key. You can also just go into the menu and do it there as well. We now need to set an origin, so I'm just going to go to ground plane, set to origin, and now you'll see a 3D point, the intersection of our 3D grid has been moved to this point right here. So that means if we were to place a cube down, it would line up by default in that area. So this is our scene, but as you can see, we have no camera, we have no tree, we don't have much to work with, so we need to create that. So I can do an export scene, hit create, and now we are given a scene node, a camera node, and a point cloud. So if I double click on the scene, I have our camera. So this is our newly tracked camera right here, and this is our scene. And if I hit this icon right here, I'm locking the camera to the scene, which is going to map to the live action plate. So I can actually check that a little bit by, let's see. Need to set this one. There we go. So let's do this the other way around. Okay, so I'm just wiping between the live action, which I can go full screen if I want, and this kind of just gives me the quickest way to check. We can do it to the scanline renderer as well, which we will at some point, but this is kind of a down and dirty way just to see how these trackers and these points are sitting in the scene. Now, if I double click the node, I get some options in that I can change the point size, but no matter what I do, it's not going to be very good in terms of recreating the scene and really giving me anything that I can really truly work with. So we have in Nuke a point cloud generator that's just a little bit more advanced and a little bit more closely connected to what I think Flame does with its camera analysis and point cloud that it creates. So let's go ahead and connect our source, connect our camera, connect our point cloud generator to the scene, and we don't need this anymore for now. And all we need to do is analyze this sequence, and it's going to kind of go through the camera track and calculate the points from there. There's also a lot of other things you can do with this node. We're not going to today. You can start to kind of create some geo and some groups and really get pretty nerdy with it, which is really cool. But for what I want to do is just to kind of showcase how good I think this point cloud can get if you've only been used to kind of this default one that comes with the camera. Once we are done with the analyze, we're just going to track the points. We need to do our sequence, which is 62 to 229. It does not take very long. Great, so what you see is what looks like just orange dots, but if I click outside of there, I can see that we've now got like a pretty good representation of the scene. All these red dots right here are points that are rejected, so if we hit delete rejected points, then they go away. Now, if it's too fine of detail for what you are after, we can adjust the point size, so we can easily kind of make it as dense as we need to. What I do notice right here is that the original point cloud extended all the way to right here, whereas our generated point cloud kind of is in a few feet. So I could probably go back and start to refine that, but I don't need to for our purposes. I guess, the combination of the 2 point clouds is more than enough for what I need to do the projection. So what can I do from this? Well, we need to add a card so that we can actually do the projection and start to clean up the scene. So much like setting the ground plane, I'm going to hover over and drag a box around points that I want to attach a card to, and I will right click and just say create card, and immediately I now have a card laying over those points. I can I could map checkerboard to it if I need to check it. I could do whatever I need to kind of verify that it's in place, but I'm not going to. I feel pretty good about this in this particular case. So what I want to do now is connect it to the scene so that the card is also attached, and I want to position it so that it's covering the area of the road that I need to retouch. So if I double click the card, let's go to a top view. I can start to manipulate it either gesturally through the viewport, or if I want to, I could actually start to move and translate and scale and rotate through the GUI itself. So when I move these numbers, you'll see them change in the kind of the GUI. So W is our translate, E is our rotation, and then R is our scale. So in this particular case, and I could change the pivot point, I'm not going to, but I just want to kind of narrow it down. And let's see, scale, and say move. We know that it's going to start around here. And I don't know if that, I think this is kind of where the sculpture is, so I might need to make it just a little bit bigger. And let's see if that is going to cover it. So I mentioned the scanline renderer. So because we have no way to view the scene in a kind of a 2D representation, we are now 100% in a 3D kind of environment. So we need to add a way to kind of translate that data. So I need to attach the camera and make a little elbow node, and then I need to attach the scene, and we need to eventually we'll merge this over a background in a different way, but for now I can just attach it to our actual background, and this will kind of give me a quick composite. It's going to end up being black because I don't have a texture on it, but let's just see if it is covering what we need. So I'll set this as a context, hit the tab key, and what you notice right away is all these pixels. Those pixels are the point clouds because they are being rendered through the scanline renderer. So I can hit the D key just to turn them off, and now they are not being kind of pushed through the render. I can see that maybe I need to go up a little bit further, but for the purpose of today's exercise, I think this is more than enough to give me the coverage that I need to paint and reproject. So how do we do this UV projection that I've been talking about? Well, we still need to do a regular projection, which is project 3D. It's asking for a sequence, which we can give it, like a foreground, and then it needs a camera, and this is going to be mapped onto our card. So let's just get this out of the way. So if I go into our 3D view, we are now seeing the camera, which is moving, and it is projecting through the camera onto the card, which basically makes it look like a still frame. And I can move this, and I will just be revealing more of the scene. So that is exactly what this projection is doing. If I turn off the background, you'll just see this area right here as it's reprojected, and it will match up to the plate because it's just reprojecting the footage through that through the camera, and it should line up 1-to-1. However, what we need is a different view because we want to paint top down. We don't want to have to paint in perspective. So in the scanline renderer, and now I'm viewing the scanline renderer, we have right now the projection mode is set to the render camera, so it's just rendering from this camera 1. But what we want is to do a UV. So now if I turn off this background, you'll see that we are now basically getting our top-down view that we need, and we can use this as kind of just a texture that we're going to paint on, much like we would in Photoshop, and then it's going to unwrap. So how do we do that? Well, let's get a paint node. So we have this roto paint, connect it, and I'll just grab my clone, shift key to kind of increase my size, and then I'm going to adjust the offset, and we'll just do a very bad paint job here. Just enough to kind of prove this point. I'm going to switch to the other side. And okay. What I also want to make sure of is that we have enough kind of bleed for any of this area. And as you noticed, I lost all the frames. Well, why did I do that? Because they were set to just the frame that we painted on, which was 134. So if I select them all, hit the life for that frame, I can just set it to all frames, and now on every frame we will see our retouch. That looks like it's probably pretty good. Oh, a little bit down here. Oops. And let's go ahead and set those to all. And now we should be okay. But unlike Flame, this is the alpha that we're carrying. We don't want all that area. We really just want the area that we painted, because we don't want to filter anything we don't need to. So if I twirl down this in the paint node, I have the option to output a mask. So now when I do this, this is the area that we just retouched and painted, and it actually showed me that I have a little bit of a hole, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. So how do we kind of invert everything and get it back into our scene? Well, we have this paint node. We need to put it back on a card. I'm just going to Command C, Command V, and put it back in a card. But remember, this is now a 3D card. This is our retouch. I'll explain all this white stuff here in a minute. I want to do it the wrong way so that we can kind of talk about it. And then we need another scanline renderer so we can kind of inverse the process. So I could copy this, just Command C, Command V, and we just need to also insert all the different things that it needs to rebuild. So we've done our object, which is the card. We've attached our original tracked camera, and we're going to see a bunch of problems when we do this, because one, we are still rendering as a projection, UV projection, when really we need to come back for our render camera. So this is our projection. It's now been retouched. It looks great. However, here, and I won't attach the background here. We'll do it as a merge. Oops. So we are gonna merge this over the background. And as I was saying, this was gonna be a problem. And this is a very common thing in Nuke, a little less common in Flame, is that this is not pre-multiplied, and right here, and it needs to be, because in Nuke, even though this is unmatted, our alpha is just this area right here, and Nuke wants this to be pre-multiplied. So the minute that I do that and now look at our context, it is solved that issue. So that's with it off, that's with it on. Very simple thing, just one more node that you need to kind of use in Nuke to kind of finish the operation. So that's it. We're done. Took about 20 minutes to track, paint, and finish our work. I think it is a really easy process, especially when you kind of just follow the tree, and I think that makes it really easy to kind of jump in and jump out of if I needed to kind of do any work, or if I need to add any more cards, or if I need to just start building from the setup. I have the foundation there, and the quality looks, I would say, really good for what we're going after. So next we'll do this same operation in Flame. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.